What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading. Today, we're going to take a look at Bitcoin dominance and other charts you need to be watching to get a sense of when altcoin season is going to come. If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of the crypto market. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders and the better investors we're all going to become. So with that being said, guys, I want to start off with this post that was shared by our main Coin Bureau account here on X. It's a really useful one. Basically, what you're looking at is Bitcoin dominance through historical cycles, and basically 300 days after the Bitcoin halving, we tend to see a big drop in Bitcoin dominance, which corresponds to, of course, an altcoin season. Just super quick for those of you who don't know, Bitcoin dominance basically measures the total crypto market cap, like what percentage of that is just Bitcoin. So the higher the Bitcoin dominance is, the more that Bitcoin is, well, dominance, I guess you could say, in the market. And when Bitcoin dominance starts to fall, that basically means that more of crypto's market cap is going towards altcoins, let's say, just for sake of simplicity. And of course, that corresponds to an altcoin season, like a huge altcoin rally. And again, historically speaking, we're entering this window now when we should start to see Bitcoin dominance falling like a rock and see altcoins basically rallying like crazy. Again, doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow, but I do think it's going to be happening, or starting rather, in the next couple of weeks. And over the summer, we're going to be seeing peak altcoin season. But of course, we do need to see some evidence of that in the charts. So again, keeping in mind that we are kind of entering this phase where we should start to see a big drop in Bitcoin dominance, we can now look at the actual Bitcoin dominance chart and get a sense of like, okay, when, roughly speaking, could we start to see that breakdown in Bitcoin dominance? Some of you guys might remember I covered Bitcoin dominance, I think it was a week or two ago now. And back then I had drawn this trend line that has been respected so far. This time around, I'm throwing on the Bollinger Bands, which are basically my favorite indicator. I honestly think is the only indicator that you need. Feel free to disagree in the comments. But as you can see here on shorter term timeframes, we're on the daily chart, by the way, you can see that the Bollinger Band moving average does a damn good job of keeping track of where Bitcoin dominance is going to go in the short term here. Literally every single time it touches that line, it seems to see a little bit of a bounce. And of course, that begs the question of what's going to happen next here. Is it going to bounce again from this level, or is it going to keep rolling over? To be honest, it's a little bit tricky to tell, but of course, history does offer a little bit of a guide. So I do think that the kind of Bitcoin dominance trend that we're seeing right now, I think it's very similar to what we saw in November of 2024. So you can see back here, if we zoom in a little bit, you can see that we saw a drop in Bitcoin dominance, then a recovery, then another drop, then another recovery, and then basically a big move lower. So almost kind of like something that resembles, let's say, like a double bottom or a double top or whatever, pattern you want to ascribe to that. But if we zoom back now to the current time frame, we can see that and again, it's up for debate as to where we are exactly in this, but I would say that, we're probably going to see potentially a drop in Bitcoin dominance to this long-term resistance trend line. So down maybe, let's say, to around 62%. And then from there, we're just going to have to wait and see, right? Could there be another bounce and then Bitcoin dominance grinds higher, let's say sometime later in the month? Maybe there's like some correction and money moves back into Bitcoin. Or what I think is more likely is that you're going to see a massive rally in Bitcoin as a result of some catalyst. If you watch the video on Monday, you'll know that I think that we could see the Czech National Bank announce Bitcoin, basically that it's Bitcoin has become part of its like strategic reserve or whatever, and I think that could happen later this month at this BTC Prague conference. It's coming up, I think, on the 19th to 21st. Again, you can watch Monday's video for more info there. But point being is that I think that what's going to happen now in the short term is we will see probably a break down. First we have to wait and see if it actually breaks below this the Bollinger Band moving average here. But if it does, then the next level to watch then would be around 62.5% on on Bitcoin dominance, and we can actually confirm that this is a correct trend line. As a fun fact, guys, like, of course, when I draw these trend lines, some people might be skeptical and everything, and a really simple way of kind of like double checking, and the way that I double check is I just zoom out to longer term time frames and I look for confluence. So here, guys, you can see that my trend line that I drew here for Bitcoin dominance is almost identical to the weekly Bollinger Band moving average. So that tells me that like this trend line is probably correctly drawn, and we can even see that if you go over the last few months, like it's been hugging that trend line seems to be hugging that moving average pretty well, right? So that does seem to be a pretty accurate line. Anyway, just as a fun fact, a very useful thing, like if you're drawing lines, try slapping on a couple indicators, Bollinger Bands, whatever, to see if there's confluence, like even just like different moving averages. And if you can see that there's confluence in the lines that you've drawn, then that means the lines that you've drawn are probably, close enough to being correct that they're useful, let's say. Anyways, so again, long story short, I do think we're going to see probably a drop in Bitcoin dominance in the short term. Whether we continue to see Bitcoin dominance rolling over after that, I'm not sure. there. I personally lean to Bitcoin dominance dropping in the short term, meaning that we get like a nice little altcoin rally over the next, let's say, couple of weeks. And then towards the end of the month, maybe there's like a pullback, or maybe Bitcoin sees some like massive outperformance. So we see another bounce in Bitcoin dominance. And then we see, let's say sometime in later in June or early July is when we actually see that big drop in Bitcoin dominance like we saw back here in late November. And that would be the thing that kind of kicks off the altcoin season. And of course, there are other indicators to watch. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, like there's actually a bunch that are really useful and that I don't really see many people mentioning, which is pretty surprising. Another one is the Russell 2000. So for those who don't know, the Russell 2000 basically measures basically it's basically a measure of like the smallest stocks like in the US stock market. It's like a small cap stock index, let's say. And you can see here, and I'll maybe even draw it out if you're having trouble seeing it, that we have a pretty clear, I would say, like almost like an inverse head and shoulders pattern going on here for the Russell 2000. Of course, I also have the Bollinger Bands on here just to show that we are seeing a bounce. This is on the daily. We're seeing a bounce off the daily Bollinger Band moving average, and I do think that that the small cap index is going to start grinding higher here. And the interesting thing is, or I guess the reason why the small cap index is so closely correlated to altcoins is because there's lots of overlap between the people who are buying these assets, right? Small cap stocks are more speculative, same like altcoins are more speculative. So you have like an overlap, let's say, of like retail investors. Small cap stocks are also more sensitive to like risk off environment or like, higher interest rates or like bond yields and stuff like that, right? Small cap stocks are really sensitive to that. Same thing with altcoins. So there's a lot of overlap in terms of the factors and investors that are playing in both asset classes, let's say. So this is another one to watch. And again, this one is looking super bullish. It looks like the small cap stock index is about to break out. Looks like the Russell 2000 is going to see, I don't know, like let's say another rally of like 5 or 10 or even 20%. And as a fun fact, or as like a rule of thumb, the Russell 2000 is basically like half as volatile as altcoins. So if we see, let's say, a 10 or 20% rally in the Russell 2000, then expect to see, let's say, a 20 or 30% rally in altcoins. So like altcoins basically rally more than the Russell 2000, basically like by a factor, let's say, of like a 50% to 2x, if that makes any sense. And of course, that brings us to the others chart, which is another useful one to watch. But the thing that I think a lot of people make this mistake, and honestly, it's one that I also made late last year, especially. The one big mistake when it comes to looking at the others chart, of course, it measures the market cap of all altcoins outside of the top 10. The big mistake that people make is people forget like what are the biggest components of this index, right? Like if you were to just sit down and think for a second, it's like, okay, altcoins outside of the top 10, where are most of those altcoins? Objectively, or at least in my opinion, well, I mean, I would say it's pretty objective. Most of this price action here is basically a reflection of two things. It's a reflection of Ethereum and it's a reflection of Solana primarily. Why? Because most altcoins with economic value exist on Ethereum and exist on Solana. So if you are able to get a sense of what Ethereum and Solana are likely to do in the coming months, then similarly to like looking at the Russell to get a sense of what altcoins are going to do, you can use basically Ethereum and Solana to get a sense of what these altcoin indicators like others are going to do. So if Ethereum and Solana are looking bullish, then chances are that others is also going to continue rallying. Same thing if you were to look just at like altcoins or the total crypto market cap, excluding Bitcoin and stablecoins, which is basically all altcoins. If you were to look at that chart as well, then you also have to ask yourself, like, what are the main components of that chart? It's also, like Ethereum, Solana, in that case more directly rather than indirectly. But yeah, whenever you're looking at, let's say, these indices, especially in crypto, like others or total crypto market cap excluding Bitcoin and stablecoins, ask yourself, like, what are the biggest components in that index, and what are the cryptos in that indicator, let's say, that have the most impact on that indicator. And then maybe it might be worth like looking at those cryptos to get a sense of what's going to happen with altcoins rather than looking at this. I'm sure a lot of people are looking at this, and even by my own analysis, like, you're looking at this, you're like, oh, like, we erased all the gains and it's going to keep rolling over and we're entering a bear market. But then when you flip over to something like Ethereum here, and we're looking at Ethereum on the monthly, you can see that this is a very beautiful morning star candlestick pattern, which basically marks like a reversal. And in my view, like, the fact that Ethereum closed last month the way that it did is like, that's just insanely bullish. Like, we're basically going to see probably like a melt up over the next couple of months here. How high is Ethereum going to go? I personally think it could go somewhere around, I would say between $7.5 and $9,000, somewhere in that range. I don't think it'll get up to 10,000 because I think there's going to be too many people selling ahead of that price target, and I don't think there's enough whale demand. Well, I mean, maybe that'll change with like all these like publicly traded companies announcing they're buying Ethereum or whatever. But I don't think there's enough whale demand for them to kind of manipulate the price above 10,000, if that makes any sense, and try and suck people back in. So chances are it'll top out like something like 8 or 9,000, I think personally. But still, from these levels, like you're looking at what, like a 3x, and that's like a pretty solid risk reward. But of course, in the short term, could there be a pullback? Sure. We're looking right now at things in case you can tell, we're looking at things on a little bit more of like a longer term time frame in terms of like when altcoin season is going to start. In case it wasn't clear enough, it looks like it's going to start sometime either later this month or early next month is when you're going to see like a broad altcoin season. In my opinion, and I think it's pretty clear, May was like the recovery month. Like we saw crypto prices recover. By now, I think it should be clear to everyone that crypto's in recovery. If it's not, then you'll feel like that by the end of this month or early next month, because that's when you'll see more broad altcoin participation. Why will you see more broad altcoin participation? Because Ethereum and Solana charts are both looking really good, and this is going to pull up this like others indicator, if that makes any sense. So again, for Ethereum on the monthly, we have a morning star, basically like bullish reversal pattern. So it suggests the next few months for Ethereum are going to be super bullish. So that's kind of like one key component of others that suggests that others is also going to continue heading higher. Next one, of course, is Solana. And if we look here on the monthly, same idea. I slapped on the Bollinger Bands this time because I find that the Bollinger Bands here are super useful. And, you know, this might be a little bit of a controversial take, but I actually think that what basically this whole thing that we're seeing right here is identical to this back here. And I know, like, you know, people might think that's crazy, like there's no way, but if you were to like just kind of imagine, maybe I'll even draw it out just to try and make it clear, that like that the Bollinger Band moving average, if we were just go back in time here, it probably looked something like this, right? And so that now if we look at the present day, you can say like, wait a minute, like this actually looks like pretty similar. You saw like a big run up, you know, kind of like multi-month run up, then like a little bit of consolidation, and then a massive move higher. And it looks like we're about to see the same thing here. And of course, you know, getting a little bit of a squeeze. It looks like we're starting to get a squeeze here as well. So in the next couple of months, sometime over the summer, for Solana to start powering higher, I think is a no-brainer. We have all these like publicly traded companies announcing these Solana strategies, like, you know, like accumulating. I think just today there was an announcement like $500 million to be raised to buy Solana by some publicly traded company, right? So the idea that Solana is going to underperform, I think that's BS. I think we're just seeing history repeat, pretty standard here. If you zoom out super far, you can make the case that this is some kind of like cup and handle pattern. But regardless, I think like $550, $700 for Sol is like a super realistic target for Sol over the summer. I personally think it'll hit close to $1,000 because in that case, there is like enough, let's say, like whale involvement, like from all this, like, you know, ties to the Trump administration and all these publicly traded companies buying billions of Solana and potentially, you know, another meme coin season to like take its price way higher, and the spot Solana ETFs and a whole bunch of other stuff. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I do hope that you found that information helpful. I guess super quick, just to recap. So again, historically speaking, we are at the stage where we should start to see Bitcoin dominance fall, which basically foreshadows an altcoin season. And so, of course, we have to figure out, like, you know, zoom in a little bit more and get a sense of like when exactly that could start. Based on the Bitcoin dominance chart, it looks like that could start, or I guess sometime later this month or early next month is when you would see like a broad altcoin season. In the meantime, I do think that there could be a nice little altcoin rally in the next couple of weeks, and then maybe later in the month, who knows, there'll be like a pullback or maybe just massive Bitcoin outperformance as a result of some bullish catalyst. A lot of people misunderstand Bitcoin dominance rising as meaning that altcoins are falling. That's not true. It could just be that Bitcoin is outperforming altcoins, right? So like, and that it's just, there's so many misconceptions around that. But anyways, so again, zooming in, we can see like, okay, it looks like Bitcoin dominance is going to roll over again sometime either later this month or early next month. And in the short term, obviously, maybe a little bit of an altcoin outperformance. We look now at the Russell 2000, same idea, like Russell 2000 is looking super bullish. Given the strong correlation between small cap stocks and altcoins, this is basically confirmation that yes, we should see altcoins rallying in the short term and also potentially in the long term. That you can even see, you know, the Russell 2000 seems to be kind of recovering out of, kind of similar again, like to what we saw back in 2023. You're seeing kind of like a recovery, and even back here you can see there's like an inverse head and shoulders, so like a recovery and then like a grind higher, and it looks like we're scheduled to see exactly that happen now in the next couple of months here for the Russell 2000. So that's good for altcoins. For others, if you were just to look at it, you know, without any other context, you would think, wow, this isn't looking too hot. But then you understand, wait a minute, others consist mostly of Ethereum, or of altcoins on Ethereum and altcoins on Solana. So let's look at what Ethereum and Solana are doing, because of course, whatever they do has a huge impact on altcoins in their ecosystem. Ethereum has a bullish reversal pattern here with the morning star on the monthly looking super awesome. Looks like it's probably going to melt up over the summer. And of course, Solana, same idea. It's basically bouncing off the Bollinger Band moving average here here on the monthly, and very similar to the pattern that we saw in late 2021 before the final melt up of like 3 or 4 months, just like massive god candles basically. And I do think that we're going to see the same thing happen again for Sol. Anyways, guys, if you did make it this far, then be sure to check out the Coin Bureau deals page. You might have noticed we were using Binance. You can get a 20% trading fee discount and up to $600 of bonuses. That's the biggest deal that you can get on Binance. It's available exclusively through the Coin Bureau. Taking advantage of that deal is super simple. Just click that link down in the description or in the comments. It'll take you to a page that looks like this. Enter your email or phone number. It takes 2 minutes to sign up. Every single altcoin you could possibly need is on Binance. If you can't use Binance for whatever reason, we do have deals on other exchanges, including Arkham, which is available to US residents, and other exchanges that are available to users in other jurisdictions who might have a hard time accessing Binance, let's say. Anyways, guys, if you did make it this far, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ping that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.